Your journey into spiritual maturity is not complete until you have entered into and then emerged from the wilderness. In other words, the wilderness setting is a vital necessity to your walk becoming that of a mature believer in Messiah. Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah. Today we begin day one of Bamidbar, starting a brand new book, typically more famously known as Numbers, due to the events of counting repetitively in this book. But the Hebraic context here is Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness. This book details more than just counting heads. It talks about the journey in the wilderness, from which will emerge a group of people now known as Am Israel. There's a lot to be said in our day about needing to have discernment. I've been crying out for this for some number of years now, for the body of Messiah, that we become a people who can discern and properly understand the voice of Elohim again. We need Yeshua to speak to us. And having heard, we need to understand that what we hear is actually what he is saying, that we ask those clarifying questions in prayer, saying to him, Yeshua, I heard you say, is this what you mean? I found myself in more than one pickle or time of trouble simply because I ran off on a tangent believing that I had heard one thing when the master had actually said something else. We won't go into those details today. Discernment, needing to properly understand the word. The reason that I think in most parts that we fail to properly discern is that we're too busy and our minds are too muddled by our Western lifestyle. We simply have too much going on and too many voices yelling at us, from the radio or XM in the automobile to YouTube to television to any number of things, social media ad nauseum. So we would understand that all these voices are vying for our time, our attention, and our focus. And in the middle of all of that, there is this craving in our spirit to take all of that away, be quiet, and listen to what the Father is saying. So strategically, the Father has given us now some 3 months of being alone. How well have we done with this? I have to personally say, not that well. The agenda on the Father's heart, besides what all the machinations of man has been, the agenda on the Father's heart was for you and I to be alone with him and understand his heart and his voice again, so that when we emerge, that we will be cleansed from our sarat. You see, the body of Messiah. We have been using Lashon Hara to attack one another, to divide ourselves, and like the one who was a Metzora, filled with sarat, or what scholars call leprosy. We've been quarantined outside the camp. Now the time of healing and restoration has come, and we want to jump immediately back into the way it's always been. There's a 7-day process of being cleansed and identified and washed and processed before we can come home. Don't rush the process. Be sure before you leave quarantine that you're properly hearing his voice again. It would actually be to your advantage to remain isolated until you hear that voice before you go running back into the fray of things. So we need discernment. We have all of this going on inwardly, outwardly, but let's learn to be still and hear his voice correctly. For Am Israel, the necessity was that they enter into a howling wilderness where they counted on the fact that Yahweh would put bread on the ground in the morning, and that he would send to them water from a rock, and that the column of fire would warm them at night, and the cloud would shade them in the day, that Moshe would tell them this is what Yah says, and that the tabernacle would manifest his presence on a regular and daily basis. They lived a very regimented lifestyle. But this did not come about easy. It took going into the wilderness where there was chaos and rebellion and division and stresses and strife, where they were attacked, where they were maligned, and where they attacked and maligned one another, to emerge on the other side as a people finally capable of even beginning to take the land. We imagine ourselves in the kingdom, living on the land that the Father will apportion to us, our inheritance, sowing and reaping crops and enjoying the abundance of the shalom that will fill the earth. I don't know that we're ready for that. Do we really think that we are ready for that? So some 10, 11 years ago, I named in some teaching 4 things that should be accomplished in the wilderness. And for the next 5 minutes, I want to share those with you. Number 1 is simplicity. The purpose of the wilderness is to bring you and I to simplicity. You see, you can't carry everything into the wilderness. If you were given 2 minutes to go into your residence and grab what you could grab what you think you might need, you would leave behind a lot of things that you spend a lot of time and money and attention on. You would grab what would be necessary, what would be vital to you for existence. When you come into the wilderness setting, then you begin to streamline, you begin to pare down, you begin to realize, I don't need as much as I think I do. I need simplicity. I need what I can carry. Not just physically, but emotionally, relationally, spiritually, mentally. You need to take what you can carry. Simplicity will free you up then to focus on time of prayer and intercession and what is most important. The second thing is order. When we go into a wilderness setting, this is new, this is overwhelming, this is more than what we bargained for. But Yah enables us to take the chaos and use it as motivation to bring about a means of order. Now, it can start with one area, just cleaning up one area, putting things where they need to be, getting rid of things that you don't need, getting the things you do need, putting them where they belong. My friend Mike Clayton is big on a place for everything and everything in its place. When I look for a tool, I have to look a while sometimes. Mike knows exactly where his are. So that's good. That's what we need. We need to see order out of our chaos. That means that you and I then will focus on, again, what is vital. The third thing is discipline. Discipline, one has to manage or learn to manage themselves. We can't always rely on someone else to do the discipline for us. We need to learn to discipline ourselves. You need to learn to listen to that small voice that says very often, hush. You're sharing too much. You're saying too much. Even a foolish man is thought to be wise if he keeps his mouth shut. Let's learn some discipline. Let's learn to put ourselves under constriction when it is necessary, to adapt to different situations. Life is not going to be about the things you already know how to do. We never learn from that. We have to go into places where it's over our head, and we have to learn to swim in deeper waters. Self-management will cause you to become quiet and still enough to hear his voice. And then finally, fourthly, desperation. Simplicity, order, discipline, desperation. In the wilderness, you will learn very, very quickly that if you don't listen to the instructions, you're going to die. Let me say that again. If you don't listen, if you don't obey the instructions, then you're never going to come out of the wilderness. You're going to die and be buried there. Therefore, out of the sheer necessity of survival, you learn to listen. Am Israel spent 40 years walking in circles in a wilderness, trying to find simplicity, order, self-discipline, and learning from their desperation. When Hasatan met Yeshua in the wilderness in Luke chapter number 4, the goal was to keep him walking in the wilderness and missing his mission and his opportunity. But he held to the word, and the word brought him out. We'll talk more about the word tomorrow. Until then, shalom.